Michael Charles, welcome to Australian Musician.
Thanks for talking with me.
You were raised in Melbourne. I believe your journey began through your father, your music journey.
Yes, my dad used to play guitar, not as a full-time occupation, but he played as a hobby, but he loved music. He had such a musical ear and everything, but he was raising a family and stuff. And back then when he was dabbling on the guitar, it was a tough way to make a living. So, but when he was raising me, I just couldn't avoid it because there was always that guitar around the house. It was either where he put it down in the living room, the kitchen, wherever he left it, I would be right up behind him and just pick it up and play this thing. So he taught me how all the basic chords and it kind of evolved from there, and there was no looking back. And it's just been my journey. It's been my life.
And what was that guitar?
He had an acoustic 6 string. I can't tell you the brand of it. I was too young to remember what he was playing, and but that's what he had. And one day he turned up with this little junior guitar and said, "Okay, this is yours." And I thought, wow, I own a guitar now.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great day.
Yeah. So once you started getting into guitar, who were the players that you admired?
Oh man. Again, I'll bring my dad up again because as I was growing up, he used to love watching this television show with this fantastic guitar player on there. And I remember one night watching the show with him, and I looked up at him and I said, "Do you ever think I'll be able to play like that?" And he kind of looked at me with this little cheeky grin, and he hesitated for a minute and just gave me one word. He said, "Practice." And that gentleman was a gentleman by the name of Glen Campbell. What an amazing play. And he's still one of my heroes. He's just, when I watch him on YouTube and things like that, he does things on that guitar that I just think he's just one of a kind.
Yeah. So when you started playing gigs around Melbourne, what sort of venues were you playing? What sort of bands were you in?
Oh wow, I started playing uh, gigs when I was like 16 years old, even earlier, maybe 14. When I was going to school, I put a whole bunch of bands together. But I guess I kind of started doing more serious gigs by age 16. So I was playing with a number of bands. And then I formed my own band by the name of Black Venom, which suited the era. And it kind of all evolved from there. And I was playing when I got old enough. I was starting to play into the pub scene. And one of the pubs that I remember was the Central Club in Richmond, the Corner Hotel, and places like that. So it kind of, back in those days, we all have to thank those bar owners, because without those bars on the corner there, I don't think we'd even recognize bands like back in the day, like Daddy Cool and Billy Thorpe and all that. We all sort of evolved around playing in the corner bar. I'm sure you remember those days yourself.
I actually remember the name Black Venom because I worked at Duke magazine back in those days.
Oh wow! I didn't think anyone would remember that name anymore.
Then at some point you were invited to play at Buddy Guy's Legends in Chicago. Tell me around about when that happened and how that happened.
Yeah, that was roughly 1989. I mean, I had a really good. I can actually say it was a thriving career in Melbourne, in the area, and all over Australia. Really, I had a lot of radio stations that were playing my records, and I travelled a lot, going into Sydney and into Canberra and, around all the little, into Adelaide and so forth and so forth. But the whole structure of playing for me was to just play as many places as possible, and then I started doing television. So Good Morning Melbourne and so forth. Just so many. Then I did some shows out in Gippsland area with Denise Drysdale. She had a show out there, so she invited me back about 2 or 3 times. So I mean, the music to me was it became my occupation. So it all just kept evolving. But back in, I think it was about 89, my management at the time said that we got invited to play in Chicago at Buddy Guy's Legends. And I got asked, what do you think? And I said, there ain't nothing to think about, man. Let's go. You don't say no to those kind of offers. So I ended up going to Chicago. It was a 2-week stint. And in those 2 weeks, it was one of the most amazing times in my life, because not just being able to get on stage with the legendary Buddy Guy, I got to meet people like Eddie Clearwater, Junior Wells, Jimmy Dawkins, Sugar Blue, all these guys that I just recognized them on album covers. And here I am shaking hands and talking with these people. It was kind of like the opposite to a nightmare. It was just something unbelievably so good. And so after those 2 weeks, I went back home to Melbourne, and I pretty much bought another ticket and came back right away. I felt like it was unfinished business. So I decided to just come back and I'll stay 6 months or so. But then 6 months turned into a year, and then a year into 2. And we're talking 36 years ago now. So, and Chicago became home. And it just all, again, it just became like a natural progression. Ended up becoming an American citizen, because it was the only way I could physically stay there full time or stay here full time. So, yeah, it's been a hell of a ride, Greg, and I'm still on that ride. It hasn't ended.
Yeah. You've recorded several albums, you played all over the country. Did you pick up management? How did your career progress?
Well, when I first got to Chicago through the invitation of Buddy Guy, um, it was like getting off the airplane and walking on a red carpet. It was just all there for me. But once that stint was over and I came back to Australia and then decided to go back, well, when I went back, it was a different animal. It was a whole different thing. I was on my own. So I needed to prove myself. But the only advantage I really had, which was a huge advantage, was all the people that I had met in the 2 weeks I was in Chicago. So I kind of just started rubbing shoulders with everybody. And I just worked hard at making sure that I appeared everywhere in all the blues clubs, and anybody that needed a guitar player, I would do it. I would just be there. I mean, I ended up playing a lot of shows with Phil Guy, which was Buddy's brother. And I became very good friends with a guy called George Bays, which was Junior Wells's guitar player. So they would take me everywhere. And then one day I was in my apartment and the phone rang, and it was the legendary Jimmy Dawkins. So I picked it up and I said, hello. And he goes, can I speak to Michael? And I said, yes, speaking. And he goes, this is Jimmy Dawkins. And I said, what, is this some kind of joke or something? I thought it was somebody giving me some kind of uh, some kind of, like I said, a joke. So, and he goes, yes, this is Jimmy, and I'm looking for a guitar player to go on the road. And he had to go to New Orleans and into California and into Philadelphia. And so I said, sure, let's do it. And but I said, I have got one condition. And he goes, so what's your condition? I said, well, the condition is that I'll do it and I'll play with you as long as you want me to play with you. But I need to open up the shows. I want to be your opening act. And that was a turning point because he actually accepted and said, fine, that's no problem with me. And that was a big turning point because here I am on these big stages, playing these huge festivals, and coming out and doing my material for a good 30, sometimes 45 minutes, and then call Jimmy out, and then I would just stay there and play for him. That was the turning point. Everything changed from that point on.
Yeah.
So I thank Jimmy Dawkins for that.
Yeah. Reason we are talking is because you're coming back to Australia in November on the Guitars, Music and Miles 225 tour. You were here last year, I think.
Yes, I was. Yeah, I was there last year. And I try in the last, I'd say 10 years or so, I try to come back every year. Sometimes I've got to skip a year, but I try to come back because I didn't go back to Australia originally. I think it was about 8, 9 years. I just didn't come back. I mean, I had to establish myself here, but I try to make a point of it, and I think it's very important. It's more on a personal level than anything. I think it's important to never forget where you come from, and that's where it all started for me.
Yeah. So tell me about this Guitars, Music and Miles tour. How does it differ from previous tours?
To be really honest with you, Greg, nothing. I started hitting the road. I started touring in 1984, 85 in Australia. And I tell everybody in all my interviews that they say to me, so what's to be expected in the new tour this year? And I'll just say, it's just a continuance from 1984. I mean, it just hasn't ended. It's just been, every year we put a new name. But for me personally, just keep adding songs, just keep trying to improve and live up to the things that you get to certain levels in your life because of others. I believe, without the help or the belief from somebody that's out there to support you, without that, it's really nearly impossible. You need the support. So I make a point of trying to constantly improve and get to a point where I'm at least 90% happy with myself as a performer, and just keep growing. I think that's what's important.
Yeah. So you're coming out with your own band?
um i'm using uh I'm using a drummer from Australia that I met through Dutch Tilders, Winston Galea.
Okay.
And I met him because I would occasionally hook up with Dutch. And so I got to know Winston. But on this tour, I said, I haven't seen Winston in so long and we haven't worked together, and he's out there doing his thing. So he said, yeah, let's do this. So I'm looking forward hooking up. I haven't seen Winston. It's got to be 35 years or something. So it's going to be fun to kind of work with him. And I'll probably, I'll see what happens. I might bring out my own bass player, or I'll see what happens from. We still got a little bit of time. I'm off to Canada next week for a month, and then when I get back from Canada, I'm going to just focus on this Australian trip.
Yeah. Tell me about the gear you're currently using on stage. What guitars, what amps?
Oh well, I in the States here and Canada, I travel with. I use about 6 or 7 guitars, for the reason that I try to use the same guitar that I actually recorded the song with. So through the years, I've kind of added a lot of guitars on my shows. And I use a custom amp. That's was originally a Marshall, but it's been customized. And it was actually customized by Daniel Desiree from Dex Audio in Melbourne. He's and Greg Williams. We still work together. He's still my producer, and he actually played bass for me on the last tour I was there. So I've kept in touch with the important people in my life in Australia. But yeah, I mean, I use Fender. I use Paul Reed Smith guitars. I use Ovation, Taylor's. As long as it feels good in my hand, I love that guitar.
Yeah. Much going on in the pedal board, or do you prefer to get your tone from fingers and the amp?
I think the main thing, well, for me, I can't talk for all guitar players, but for me, it is the fingers and make that guitar have its own tone or your tone. I like using a little bit of a boost every now and then just to kind of make the note break a little bit on me. I don't like using too heavy distortion or anything like that. I love the purity of a guitar tone. So kind of, I mean, I've got this pedal board that looks huge and everybody keeps looking at it, but I always tell them, have a really good look at it. There's hardly anything in there. It's just running my gear. It's not a lot of effects or anything like that. I mean, the guitar is so beautiful to play. I love playing acoustic guitar because it's so natural. It's just such a beautiful sound.
Yeah. Just tell me about your main acoustic.
I use Ovation, and that particular guitar that I'm using back in 1995, my record label that I was with in the States when I came to the States, they gave me that, well, a guy by the name of Jack Mel, which was the owner of the label, he gave me that for my birthday. And I still play that guitar. I just love that guitar. And I actually named it Jack. Every time I play that guitar, that Jack Mel is with me.
Yeah. 19 is the name of your current album. It's a live album. Where are you at with recording new material?
I'm in the middle of actually working on a new album, new studio album. And also right now we're recording every show that I do live. And I'd like to bring out a live album as well sometime next year. So just keep recording and recording. And I think for me, my last live album was an album that I recorded live in Canada, and I recorded several shows, and then I picked the show that I thought was the best one. I like to kind of pick a show and have that, make that the live album, instead of bits and pieces. I mean, that's what it's about, right? I think it's all about capture the show.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite live blues albums?
Oh, I love. I mean, I still enjoy and love Phantom Comes Alive, the one from the 70s. That's just that was my favorite live album back in the day, and it stays in my top 10. And I love Buddy Guy's live album, Live at the Checkerboard Lounge. I just think there's such a feel in that record too. I mean, there's a bunch of live albums that are great, but those two kind of, as soon as you asked the question, they were the first two that come to mind.
Yeah. Because you're playing so often, do you find it hard to write on the road? Do you have to be stationary to be able to write properly?
I have never in my whole career, I've written, oh, I don't know how many songs I've written, but I've never sat down and said, I'm going to write a song. A song I'll let it come natural. I'm either practicing or fiddling or just, keep my fingers active, and I'll stumble on something and go, wow, that sounds pretty good. And that's where my songs come from. And then the lyrics always come from either something that I've experienced in my life, or something that somebody has said, given me a story that's something that's happened to them that's kind of touched me in some way, and a song will come out of that too. I don't believe I'm a really good storyteller, so sing about and write about what you know, instead of trying to make something up. We'll leave that to the movie makers.
Yeah. What do you consider to be some of your greatest milestones?
Yeah, being Grammy elected is kind of cool, and I'm actually a Grammy voter too. I'm actually one of those dudes that will say put a vote in for who I think should win a Grammy. So that's quite an achievement. And I would have to say, when I heard that I was being put into the hall in the Chicago Blues Hall of Fame, I think that one really touched me because, number one, being in the Chicago Blues Hall of Fame, and I still look at myself as just this guy from Melbourne, Australia. I just, that little kid that was playing in the streets in Coburg, and so to me that was one of the biggest and greatest pats on the back I could have had.
Yeah. What are you
Quite
what are you looking forward to most about the upcoming Australian tour?
I'm looking forward to just playing to the Australian audiences again, and just the biggest buzz I get, Greg, when I come to Australia is every time I step on that stage and see that there's people there still coming out to see me. That's quite an amazing thing. I've played in Melbourne, Bird's Basement. I've played that. I think this will be my third time. And the last two times I played there, I mean, we had quite a full house, and I'm hoping we can do it again. And I think that, again, that's just another great feeling and a great honor. I mean, when you've been playing shows as long as I have, I did my first show when I was 7 years old, and I've never looked back, and just keep going. And in 2025 and say, well, I'm still doing it. That's probably my greatest achievement in my life, is say, well, man, I'm still doing this, and my fingers are not falling off the guitar neck yet. So I'll keep going.
Yeah, I see one of the gigs is with Dave Hall as well.
Yeah, I learned that like a couple of weeks back, and I've always been a huge fan. What a slide player. And I've and he's probably the only other Australian that I know that stepped up and made a mark in Chicago too. So he was with Alligator Records, and I'm like, wow, another guy that I've really respected for many, many years. I get to meet, because when Dave Hull was touching the scene in Australia, was pretty much when I was leaving Australia. So I didn't really have the opportunity to kind of rub shoulders or get to meeting. So I'll take the opportunity now.
Yeah.
I'm pretty honored with that too.
Yeah. Well, Michael, it's been great to chat, and we look forward to seeing you down here very soon.
Yes, Greg, and thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Cool. That was great, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.